We are in a dead period for recruiting for another day, and I think the holidays will create an unofficial dead period in terms of new coaching announcements. We did just get an announcement official that Chad Scott is being retained or rehired as the running backs coach. Rich Rodriguez did say that official announcements wouldn't be made all at once. He would probably, do them, a couple of hours apart. So we may see some more official announcements involving the people that have already been unofficially named. I don't think, well, some people would say, I don't think that we will get any news about new hires at the positions that have not yet been filled. I do think a lot of things will probably happen the first week of January, not counting the first. So say January 2nd, January 9th, I expect a lot. That'll be official announcements, naming new coaches. We'll have a lot of players from the transfer portal coming in to visit starting on the 2nd. Whether or not any of them will make quick decisions. Sorry for the shake there. Rockus bumped the camera stand. He's a little unsteady these days. So am I. But, so we've got a lot coming, but we've got a couple of days with probably not much. So to tide you over, and to tide me over, I don't know. I'm going to take a look at the current coaching roster. I don't want to call it a depth chart necessarily, but sort of that idea. What's been filled, who might or might not be where for the ones we don't know, and what positions are still open, some of which haven't heard a whisper. So, in the meantime, this is WVU Football Going Deep, a channel for fans who like to think as well as cheer. And remember, no trash talk, no insults, unless we're having fun. There is such a thing as a non-mean insult. And I am Forrest Poston. I'm familiar with insults. Anyway, looking at the coaching situation, it's kind of coming together. We still got a lot of mysteries. And I know some people think I am being too negative. Mostly, it's just there are a lot of unknowns right now. I know, transition was expected. Some of the players who left weren't necessarily expected. But that's also the nature of the game. And we simply do not yet know how those players will be replaced, what coaches are still going to be hired, how things will work out with the coaches we have. We are in not quite brand new territory, but a lot of changes, which raises a lot of questions. Some of those questions will end up with positive answers. Some of them almost certainly will end up with negative answers. We don't know which ones are which, how positive, how negative, or how it's all going to balance out. So I will be looking at the hopes and the fears. I will be looking at the questions. I will not walk away from uncertainty. And if you want a hard edge, look uncertainty in the eye. That's the trick. All right. Now, on the offensive side, now, of course, we've got Rich Rodriguez as the head coach, Zach Alley as defensive coordinator and assistant head coach. That doesn't always get mentioned. He does have both roles. We do not have an offensive coordinator. I know some people think that Rich Rodriguez will simply assume the role. I doubt that. Wouldn't be my first mistake, but I mean, it takes up a lot of time that I don't think he wants to take away from other things. And I mean, typically he does not, take on that role. He finds somebody else to do the coordinating while he controls what the offense plan overall is and the play calling. It would seem of the coaches currently on offense that either Bicknell or Chad Scott would be the most likely candidates because Bicknell has just tons and tons of experience. I did not double check to see if he has been an offensive coordinator. I think he might have been once at some point briefly, but it's been a while. Chad Scott, less experience, but he does have experience with the players who are still there. And, as offensive coordinator last year, we would get continuity, and it means he has worked a lot with those players. The announcement on Twitter just listed him as running back coach. So does that mean he's not going to be the offensive coordinator? Or does it mean that hasn't been decided yet? Or does it mean somebody else that, either already on the staff or not yet hired or mentioned will be offensive coordinator? That is one of the mysteries. Now, of course, Chad Scott, was in the same situation last year, coordinator without calling plays. So he's proven he can handle that. And not everybody can. So that might be a factor, might not. Might be that Rodriguez still wants to get to know Scott better before making a decision. These are things I do not know. And neither Chad Scott nor Rich Rodriguez has a clue who I am, doesn't have my phone number or my email. They are not going to contact me just to give me the inside scoop. Now, Bicknell confirmed he's the offensive line coach. And we probably have the primary coaches settled on offense. If you break it down to the traditional positions, we've got everybody. Now, these days, you don't have a limit on how many coaches you can have. So we may add people. We may do more specialization. We may do a lot of things. But the primary guys are in place. But position assignments, and of course, eventually we'll get to recruiting area assignments, but those, some are still to be decided. Bicknell is settled. Now, we have Garrett and Nicewander who are coming in from Jacksonville State. And we have Blaine Stewart being retained. And they all have similar backgrounds. I think Garrett was wide receivers at Jacksonville State, and Nicewander was inside receivers and tight ends. That was what Stewart did at West Virginia last year. So are we dividing things up differently? Will one or more of them be assigned to something else? Again, we do not know. Now, Rodriguez has the most, experience with his two guys from Jacksonville State, so it would seem most likely that they would get the same assignments as before, unless one of them is getting moved up in some way. So that would seem most likely that Blaine Stewart is getting a different assignment, possibly even a non-coaching assignment. We don't know. Yeah. Rodriguez, obviously he and Blaine Stewart go way, way back, but he doesn't necessarily know him as a coach. So again, it may be a matter of him getting to know what his particular abilities and tendencies are and where he would fit. Well, we will see. Quarterback coach is probably going to be Rich Rodriguez's son, Rhett. That's been the talk. I think, one of the quarterback recruits has mentioned talking to him and being told he's the quarterback coach, or I think it was working with the quarterbacks. That was mentioned on the 24/7 site. Now, would Rodriguez be ready to be an offensive coordinator? That I do not know. Cannot eliminate him from the possibilities. And of course, running back coach Chad Scott, that one is firm. It's just a question of whether or not he's only the running back coach or running back coach and offensive coordinator. But we know that much. So there are some things that are currently fixed and settled, which is good. Having some fixed points to work from creates a little comfort zone. Now, special teams, that is one of the possibilities for Blaine Stewart. Again, may hire somebody else for that they haven't named yet. Sorry, again. I've got a... Okay, camera is still good. Raucous is just not good. But meanwhile, defense, okay. Defensive coordinator, I think we can say that is settled. Zach Alley, defensive coordinator. And I mean, I expect an intriguing defense. What it will be, I doubt that Alley even knows at this point. He uses a lot of different defensive types, not just defensive formations. I mean, some fairly distinct, anything from a four-man front to essentially a 3-3-5. Depends a lot on the personnel. Now, he will change from game to game depending on, the opponent. But what the base defense will be will depend on the personnel. Now, of course, he's still going to be kind of analyzing who he's got and has to see who he gets. So I assume it will be partly trying to get guys that will fit into the defense maybe he prefers, and also, determining the defense based on who they actually manage to sign and get into the program. So I expect he'll have his primary choices before spring practice, but some of that may still have to be flexible as the transfer portal gives and takes. It's one of those things that is going to be really, really interesting. Now, having Jeff Castile around, I really think, Castile is coming in, partly it gives Rodriguez a little comfort. He knows that Castile can work with him. And Castile had some great defenses at West Virginia. People talk about the 3-3-5 as bend, don't break. That's not necessarily true. That all depended on the experience level that Castile had with his players at the time. There were some really great active defenses in that period. And, Holgerson's first year, look at the Orange Bowl. That was when Castile turned his players loose. Now, but Castile, I have to guess that he is there partly because Alley is 30 years old. He is smart, he is good, but he is 30 years old, and there is a limit to how much you can learn in 30 years. you get Jeff Castile. And even if the 3-3-5 or other flex defenses are only part of the scheme, Castile is going to know some things that Ali hasn't learned yet. I mentioned, when Ali, when I did the video that announced, Ali was hired, I said, Castile and Ali together is a really intriguing prospect. If those two guys really get along, Ali is going to benefit a lot, which means the West Virginia defense will benefit a lot. Now, at the same time, that experience issue, if it's a more traditional defense, that doesn't necessarily matter as much. If it's closer to a 3-3-5 or is a true 3-3-5, or the flex defenses, it can matter a lot, which means we might see more things starting to happen the second half of the season. But Ali does like to be aggressive with his front four and linebackers. Meanwhile, finally moving on. Defensive line, we've got Green. That is, I don't think it's been officially announced, but Green has put it on his Twitter account. He will be the defensive line coach. And in case you haven't noticed, we have Garrett Green graduating, and among the coaches we have Garrett and Green. So it's meaningless, but then I noticed that I did find it intriguing. I'm like that. Now, linebackers, there's a question. Typically, Ali's been a linebacker coach. Will he be defensive coordinator and linebacker coach? Will he hire a linebacker coach instead? Will Castile coach linebackers, which was his primary area in the past? Will they divide the linebackers among them, inside and outside? Or will Castile simply be a consultant, analyst, not a field coach? That has not been announced. And, it may be something that hasn't been decided. It may also depend on how Ali and Castile get along. A lot of this isn't just new territory for the fans, new territory for Rodriguez. He hasn't, he's made several coaching changes in his career, but in some respects, this one may be different from all the rest in multiple ways. And of course, I wasn't paying attention to the other changes, so I can't really compare. But there are some intriguing relationships that could develop among the staff. We'll see. Now, that's what we know and what we guess, or what I guess anyway. Now we have pretty much mysteries. Will there be a separate coach for edge rushers? When Ali uses a four-man front, it's frequently two down linemen, and the ends are actually, maybe standing, maybe down, but they are primarily edge rushers. They don't act like the bandit. They're not really involved in pass coverage most of the time. So it sort of is and isn't a four-man front. But it's part of how he does, get pressure on the quarterback. He also has in some of his formations what he calls, or Venables calls, I don't know, the cheetah, similar to the spur. It's a hybrid player, part of what makes it a flex defense. And the player filling that role, like the spur, it may be somebody who's in between, linebacker and corner, or somebody who's, are they more linebacker, or are they more corner, between corner and safety? And again, it depends on down and distance and type of offense played by the opponent. There are several players on the roster who could fill the role. They're all young. Actually, Tarnu, I guess, has announced that he will be coming back. With the ruling about junior college players and the junior college not necessarily counting against eligibility at the NCAA level, it means even if they rule against that later, the injunction specifically said, players can use it this year, and the NCAA cannot punish teams or players if the decision goes the other direction later. So Tarnu originally, I think, was just going to move on, has announced, I saw on the 24/7 board, I didn't actually double check, but that is an experienced player who played some time at Jacksonville State. So it is somebody that knows the system. I think that's the first we have on defense. One of the linebackers at Oklahoma, their primary linebacker actually, has entered the portal. I think he's going to be visiting West Virginia. So the timing of that suggests he might want to follow Ali. May have other players or coaches who do. Just as multiple players have followed Matt Moore to Virginia Tech. Al Tuner is, I guess, committed there now. But I don't know. Is there a different coach for the cheetah spear position, or will somebody who covers the corners or the linebackers also do the spear? And of course, entire defensive backfield is still unknown as far as coaches. Again, will Ali try to bring somebody from Oklahoma? Do they? I assume they have picked out who they want, but haven't necessarily gotten them yet. It's also possible they've picked them out and they've gotten them, but it hasn't been announced yet. But nothing seems to be leaking on that front. So the defensive backfield, which admittedly is the biggest question mark the last several years, remains the biggest question mark right now. We need players, and we still need coaches. So permit me, please, to wonder just what will happen, rather than assuming it will magically be guaranteed to work out. It is going to be tricky. Not saying it can't be done, not saying it won't be done. If we knew it would be done, it would be a whole lot less interesting. But right now, nothing there but question marks. Okay, that's where we stand in terms of coaches that I am aware of at this point. We'll, I guess, know a lot more after the spring game. I do not know how things will be done as far as press conferences. How much will we get to see the assistant coaches and the position coaches? I like to see them just to get to know them, but that is another thing that we will have to wait, and it will work out. Okay, guys, I need to spend some time with Raucus. We do have a lot of football games coming up, and I'm sure after that we will have a lot more information about players and coaches. In the meantime, so long.